Hello and welcome to our live roundtable session on leveraging smart quality approaches in manufacturing and how to link traceability to GMP and GDP. My name is Aprajita Singh, Marketing Executive from BSI India. Thank you all for joining us here today. Before we start with the session, I would like to mention some ground rules. You have joined in a listen-only mode. If you have any questions, then please use the control panel on your right and write the questions in the question box. Our speakers will do their best to answer as many questions at the end in the Q&A session. But if due to time limit your questions remained unanswered, then we will share this after this web session. The session is being recorded and you will receive the recording after the completion of this session. And now let me introduce to our speakers for this roundtable. First, we have Angus Metcalf. He's the Managing Director, Global Healthcare Sector at BSI. Before joining BSI 3 years ago, he was a Commercial Director for the BMJ and prior to that, SVP for the Pharma Division of Thomas Router. During his 20 years in healthcare, he also consulted for the British Pharmacological Society and NEJM on a broad range of life sciences and medical opportunities. Second speaker we have is Mr. Vasudev Murthy. He's the head healthcare at BSI India. He's a well-traveled with 30 years of experience, in which 17 years in management system awareness, implementation, lead auditor courses in quality, safety, environmental, and business continuity specialist with an understanding of global business culture and practical implementation of these management systems. The third speaker we have is Mr. R.K. Agarwal, the President BDMAI and MD at Nakoda Chemicals. He's a BTech chemical engineer with about 47 years of industrial experience, initially as a professional and last 30 years as an entrepreneur. Managing Director of Manufacturing Bulk Drugs and Specialty Chemicals at Nakoda Chemical Limited. He is currently the National President of Bulk Drug Manufacturers Association in India, Director of the GDP Affluent Treatment Plant Limited. The fourth speaker we have is Dr. B.M. Rao. He is the ex-Vice President Quality Assurance Emerging Markets at Dr. Reddy's Laboratories. He possesses a PhD degree in chemistry and has 32 years of experience in pharmaceutical analytical research and development, quality control and assurance. Functions in reputed organization includes Janssen's, pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson, Novartis, Zydus Cadila, Nicholas Peramil, and Dr. Reddy's. He has a wide exposure to various regulatory audits, includes US FDA, EMEA, TGA, Health Canada, etc., worked with reputed international consultants in QC remediation. The fifth speaker we have is Mr. Chandrasekhar, the Vice President Quality Assurance at Biological E. He has Pharma QC QA compliance experience for more than 25 years, including United States Pharmacopoeia, that is USP, and Dr. Reddy's. He is a certified quality auditor from ASQ, which is the American Society for the Quality. The last speaker we have is Mr. Lakshmana Murthy. He is the Director of Quality Assurance at USP, which is United States Pharmacopoeia. He is a certified pharmaceutical GMP professional, a certified quality auditor by AQS and ICH Q7 auditor by API Compliance Institute in Europe. He has around 22 years of experience in development, quality assurance, GMP auditing, and regulatory compliance functions, including GMP teachings. Thank you all to our speakers for joining us here in this live session. And to start with this session, I would like to hand over to Angus. Welcome, Angus. Over to you.
Thank you very much, and what an honour it is to be amongst such a distinguished panel. I'm delighted to be able to stand in for my colleague Courtney Soulsby, who's sadly caught on a plane somewhere over the Atlantic at the moment. So I'm really pleased to be able to be part of this. And just to start us off with a few thoughts, I think it's fair to say this industry, the broader life sciences industry, has been thoroughly tested over this last 3 years during this pandemic. The need for a rigorous compliance with regulation and the strict adherence to best practice surrounding quality, safety, and the efficient manufacturing and distribution of medicines has never been greater. COVID, I think, highlighted the need for quicker and more efficient scaling up of manufacturing and distribution capabilities while embedding quality controls throughout. The pandemic really showcased the requirement for advanced and quicken the pace of digitization of quality management systems through technology and through digital platforms, whilst ensuring that data privacy and the quality controls remained in place. We're here to learn from these 4 wonderful experts in quality control and assurance in the pharma industry in India. We look forward to a really healthy and interactive debate with our audience and the opportunity to learn from each other, but particularly these 4 gentlemen. Maybe to start with, I can throw a question to you, Dr. Rao, before we come to Mr. Murthy and then to Mr. Agrawal. I'm interested from the Dr. Reddy perspective, Dr. Rao, about how you have been managing quality in a smarter, in a technologically enabled way. Perhaps you could start us with that.
Yeah. So Angus, are you able to hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yeah, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. I think, in fact, till last Friday, I was with Dr. Reddy's. So I have worked there for almost 7 years at a senior level in the quality. So Angus, as you rightly mentioned, we have real challenges, especially during this pandemic, the last 3 years, 2.5 to 3 years. So in fact, Dr. Reddy's has heavily invested in the digitalization in last few years. In fact, before the COVID also, Dr. Reddy's started investing on the digitalization initiatives very heavily, both in the manufacturing as well as in the quality. So, for example, in the manufacturing, just to touch upon few points, in the manufacturing, there was manufacturing execution systems have been implemented, and digital DPRs were implemented, where there is no manual data recording by the humans, at the shop floor, and that is one example. And as far as the quality control labs are concerned, a lot of digitalization initiative has been taken up. Like for example, one of the important thing is the LIMS, laboratory information management systems. Like right from the sample weighing to the result generation, everything has been automated. Like, once the analyst weighs the sample on the balance, the weight will automatically go into the, for example, chromatography system, and later, the analyst will prepare the samples and keep it on the HPLC. And after that, even in the calculations, there is no manual Excel sheets. Everything is automatic. So once we load the sample till the end of the result generation, everything is digitalized. So there are 2 things about this which I can highlight. One is, in India, a few years back, like 2014, 15, 16, we had a lot of challenges with regulatory inspections with respect to data integrity and all. So to avoid, potential data integrity, because in each QC lab there will be 500, 600 people will be working. So it is very, very difficult to practically monitor each and every person, the bench people who are working. So it's inevitable to have some digital systems to and controls rather than to avoid many human interactions. So I think LIMS has really helped to control the any chances of potential data integrity. And also it has given a lot of productivity improvement also, like, it's really helpful. So two things I have highlighted here. One is on the manufacturing front. The batch manufacturing plants have been automated, fully automated, digitalized. And even in the manufacturing, when we take the annual product quality review reports, even everything is we get from the system, data lake, central data lake. And in the quality control, the one example I mentioned is on the LIMS. But second example also, like we have a second reviewer checks, like analytical quality assurance checks. Those have been automated by using robotic process automation. For example, chromatographic data, analyst is generate the data. Typically in the pharmaceutical industry, the second checker will do a lot of checks, manual checks, and that has been automated. There is a robotic process, automation where it will automatically check, if there are any unprocessed chromatograms, any person deleted the data, all those things are automated. So these are the few examples I can share. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. That's really interesting. And I'm going to come to Mr. Murphy from US Pharmacopoeia to get that perspective on that same question, if I may.
Certainly. Thank you, Angus and BSI for this opportunity. My wishes to all the participants as well as the panelists. So before I begin with sharing my views on this question, so I just want to discuss about few disclaimers. I'm representing this panel as an individual SME because USP's text is considered as an official text and has legal implications. The talk I'm going to make here is not to be considered as an official text from USP. That's one thing. Second thing, at the same time, the software tools or software applications that I would be referring is only to provide the context and not to promote any brand, because USP shall not provide an official ex post facto interpretation to one particular brand or one particular make, so that leaving the other party at a possible disadvantage. This is a standard disclaimer I would like to mention before I continue with my talk. Yeah, it's a question that is ringing in many people's mind, that how to manage quality in a smarter, technologically enabled way. Earlier days, good old days, people were to manage with a lot of bundles of documentation for whatever the batch processes that they used to do. Is it from a manufacturing front or a testing front, release and distribution aspects? But as we transform into digital age, many matured organizations have made wise investments to transform or adapt into this kind of digital technologies for at least three reasons. One is to work simplification and also to process efficiency. The third thing that has come from the regulatory front, that is to minimize the human intervention and to bring in that kind of data reliability assurance. That's what Mr. BM has mentioned a while ago. So it's only to minimize the human intervention. So when the matured organizations have invested on that digital thing, they have really survived it through or sailed it through during this COVID-19 pandemic. Because when we look forward for a reimagined workplace with minimum intervention and more from a digital thing, and when people are working while we are trusting everyone, we just need to have those checks and means which can deburden the reviewers. So that is where the smarter technologies have helped many organizations, starting from LIMS kind of softwares that they have installed, or WebEx kind of tools that they have installed for meetings, trainings, and also with respect to the audits, accustoming themselves to this virtual remote audit kind of approaches. From USP's perspective, I would like to refer few of the software tools or the smarter technologies or the automations that we have done, because as part of 2025 strategy, our Chief Executive, Mr. Ram Singh, has visualized this, and digital is one of the theme in our 2025 strategy. So we have made right investments in that regard. Starting from the inventory management, we have such an ERP system that is built into this. Whatever the incoming materials that are coming into our premises, those are being tracked through that kind of ERP, electronic inventory system, And over and above that, we have this QR coding system, which helps to track this inventory of reagents, chemicals, or even the columns to that extent. So with a centralized view of the inventory. And at the same time, LIMS, as Mr. BM has already mentioned it, I don't want to emphasize much on that. We have such software tools with respect to that. And we also use some softwares for restricted party screening, because USP is collaborated with many volunteers, many stakeholders across the globe, and USP standards are widely used in more than 145 countries. So, and those are recognized as legal standards in more than 40 plus countries. So we have to have such a robust system to screen our vendors, our suppliers, our partners. So we use an Amber Road, that's a brand name of the software, which gives a plausible alerts to us or flags to us, just in case those companies are involved with some kind of fraudulent activities, so that we can debar them, we can restrict doing some business with them. That's what I would like to add. And of course, you all know that maintaining the deviations or out of specifications or corrective preventive actions, tracking them in a systematic manner to see that whether or not these events had happened in the past, are they recurring now, or what is the best possible ways to track, trend those kind of issues within the QMS system. We have a software tool called Master Control. Is a single loop control system that tracks everything in one way. And similarly, there are other softwares many organizations are using, like emerging technologies, artificial intelligence, to have these kind of smarter ways of tracking them. And how any organization can go and explore these implementation of these smarter technologies, it is very subjective. Each organization is unique in its processes, unique in its needs and expectations. It is up to the manufacturer what all processes that they want to automate, what all processes that they want to digitalize. Accordingly, they need to go. But one caution I would like to mention here before I conclude my opinion, you just need to look for validated softwares or validated instruments, and you just need to ensure 21 CFR Part 11 kind of compliance. And at the same time, you just need to have a data governance structure in such a way that you would establish the user privileges, you would enable the audit trails on those systems where you would be using these smarter technologies, so that these will be ever ready for any external regulatory audit. That's what I would like to add here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. It's insightful. I appreciate that. To you, Mr. Agrawal, I'm interested to know from both of your hat perspectives, from the president of the trade association, but also, of course, the MD of a leading API manufacturer, your thoughts on this question, please. You're on mute at the moment, sir.
Good evening, everyone. Leveraging smart quality approaches in manufacturing is a very broad. It applies to all the manufacturing sectors, but we are talking here about specific reference to the pharmaceutical industry. Especially being president of the Bulk Drug Association, I would like to talk about the mid-tech companies, about the small medium companies, because bulk of the production is made in the smaller companies, in the relatively small medium companies, which have limitations in their capacity to invest. So I would like to say that manufacturing of APIs and drug products is essentially quality driven. These are the products which are quality driven, and the quality of each API or a drug product is defined by a monograph in a pharmacopoeia, whether it is USP or EP or JP or IP or anyone else. You know, different countries have their own monographs and they are defined. And the purity of the drug product is important, but more than the purity, the impurity is very, very important. I think Each monograph defines the limit for each specified impurities and also unspecified impurity. Additionally, the limit for unspecified impurity is defined by the maximum permissible daily intake based on the dosage of the compound, based on the dosage of the active ingredient. So with this being the scenario, how do you achieve this? You know, these low levels of impurity cannot be achieved only at the last mile purification. It has to be built, over step by step. Hello? It has to be built in steps, and it has to be built right from the vendor selection, and it has to go to till the customer. So the quality has to be built in steps. Our aim here is to discuss and debate how quality approaches which can be leveraged to reduce manual interventions and consequently the errors involved. The methodology to this will depend on the size of the operation, criticalness of the quality parameter, and of course the affordability. The API industry is very fragmented, ranging from multi-billion-dollar companies to sub-million-dollar companies. There cannot be one fit solution for all the companies. Each company needs to charter their own. They need to charter its own course. The new technologies like advanced data techniques, robotics, artificial intelligence are available, but may not be feasible for a mid-sized companies because of the cost involved and because the cost benefit, cost returns as compared to the investment. Additionally, medium-sized companies cannot access the technical talent required to maintain such complex systems. Now, in this scenario, what should a mid-sized company do? The strong case can be made in favor of automation and digitization as tools to be adopted for greater efficiency and consistency in operation. Automation, digitization, and integration will impact all areas of production, all areas of manufacturing, starting from warehousing to QC, to warehousing, to manufacturing, to QC, to QA. Digitization of inventory in the warehousing will lead to optimization of the inventory levels, thereby bringing cost reduction. Similarly, automation and digitization of process parameters such as temperature, pressure, and pH, they are relatively easy and affordable. And automation and digitization will help in process optimization, leading to consistent output and in terms of quantity and quality. Automation and integration of critical parameters will reduce time. It will be reduced time taken for transporting samples to QC, and they will give real-time data to enable you to make corrections on the real-time basis. Additionally, this transfers the QC job to the production shop floor, and thereby QC becomes free to take up release analysis and to do the method developmental job and to do more, quality-oriented jobs. So this will help in better compliance, reducing repeated deviations and time taken for follow-up for actions such as investigation, CAPA, and closure reports. So I think these are the tools which mid-tech companies can adopt. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Agrawal. Vasu, can I hand it over to you for the next couple of questions?
Yeah, fine. Thank you very much, Angus. And thank you all who have actually joined this roundtable. My next question is actually, we've been talking a lot about quality culture and how we actually try to bring in this culture into the industry as well as especially in the pharmaceutical industry as such. As you had already mentioned about how do we try to do it in a very smart way, I think a good explanation from three of you. How would you, in fact, try to empower the quality culture in the organization? So I ask Mr. R.K. Agrawal, how do you, in fact, try to look with regard to it?
Positive quality culture is very, very important for any organization. And where the quality culture is built, where each employee should own the responsibility towards quality. It's very important. Quality is not the QA person or QC person's responsibility. It is the responsibility of each and every employee of the company. Each employee must escalate the issues. Whatever quality issues comes to him, he should not try to suppress them. Because if an issue is escalated, it will find an answer. Each employee should work happily. He should feel happy in working. Even if there are issues, he should be happy in handling those issues. He should not, so there should be pleasure in handling issues. Each employee should participate in the continuous improvement. So it's a duty, because the good idea doesn't come only to the high-ranking person. The good idea can come from the shop floor. It can come from a lower-level person. So everybody should be allowed to participate, and everybody should contribute to the good ideas. And so all this culture can be only embedded through the training. I think, in nutshell, if I have to say that there has to be a comprehensive training program whereby the GMP training and the subject training and the specific area-related training is must for each and every employee. That is the key word to develop the quality culture in any organization. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think, you really touched upon the training part, where a lot of organization, in fact, they try to see to it and how they emphasize and see to it that, they put it in practice as such. Well, the same question that, I would like to ask Mr. Chandrasekhar, who is from the quality control and quality assurance, not from, from the shop floor as such. You would be, in fact, trying to look at it. How would you, in fact, try to empower these with culture and see to it that, all these people come into one particular way? Over to you, Chandrasekhar.
Thank you, Mr. Vasu. Thanks for giving me this opportunity. So what are the, these expressions are my personal, not on behalf of my company. With regard to quality culture, the training plays a major role, because our organizational vision, we should make sure that it should reach to the shop floor. So from multiple levels, the training has to go in a thorough manner, and the practical experiences which industry is facing, the learnings from warning letters, USFDA 483s, that can be given as a case studies during our training sessions. And during recruitment of contractual staff, because most of the contractual staff are locals, which may not have the same understanding as experienced and educational persons. So we should make sure that our recruitment process onwards, we have this checks, reality checks about their knowledge, reading capabilities, understanding of GMP work things, and our trainings also should have this local language as well as English as well as the local language things in SOPs. So we have to make sure that revisions, whatever the SOPs we are having revisions, that should also happen to the local languages. And while interacting, we should have some kind of demos, how to interact with auditors, do's and don'ts. So and as part of mock audit, we should also check as part of our quality assurance part on day-to-day activities. That way we can build the quality, and the SOPs also should be very simple, not too many pages. That aspect we have to take care, and we have to make sure all the SOPs should be in line with the current regulations, and periodically we have to monitor, track the US and European websites and other Indian websites, what is happening in industry regulatory body, so that we need to incorporate in our SOPs. So these are the few things, Mr. Vasu.
Sorry, thank you. I think, both of you have touched upon, one was more on, how you try to leverage and implement and then communicate these aspects. And what do we try to communicate? We need to have certain criteria, like, very rightly, as you mentioned, the standard operating procedures, the way that, how it is to be done. Otherwise, each of us, we would not be, in fact, trying to understand what kind of culture we would like to take it further. Thank you very much for that. My next question actually is moving on to, in fact, this has been talked a lot about the data integrity. And, these factors that, sometimes, gives an industry, whoever is actually practicing, and when they have completed the audits or their implementation, these are sometimes even reviews of these particular informations as such. How is this data integrity so much important, and how does it, in fact, try to look into, from a GMP perspective, for an organization? How would you, in fact, try to express this, or how would you try to tell the audience and say that, how important is data integrity? So I ask Mr. Lakshmanamurthy to give his opinion on this topic.
Yeah, sure, Mr. Vasu. This is a topic that's very close to me, and I know that many of the industries have struggled because of these data assurance issues. They have landed into a lot of regulatory repercussions, debacles, and they have invested a lot of money to come out of that kind of regulatory issues. Data assurance, if you take the definition of it, the extent to which the data is complete, consistent, and accurate is called data assurance. The simplest definition I would like to mention here, doing the right thing first time when nobody is observing. That means when the regulators, when they can't be present like your own quality assurance people at the site, their expectation is that you would follow the procedures as you have outlined. You would follow the processes as you have filed in a dossier application. So when you are not following those procedures, it is going to land you into a data assurance issue. So then how to deal with this kind of data assurance, what extent that they would have to apply this. Because data assurance, you have to follow a process-based approach, and you need to implement data assurance principles throughout your product life cycle. What is that product life cycle as defined in ICH Q10? You will have to start it from the development phase, technology transfer phase, commercialization phase, and product discontinuation phase. If you were to follow through all the 4 phases without a discrimination, that means I'm in an R&D environment, data assurance principles are not really applied to me. I can play around the reports that I generate, and that means you will be in future landing into some kind of issues. And at the same time, after product discontinuation, you cannot say that my doors are shut, I'm no longer making a product, that I don't need to comply with any kind of data assurance things after I discontinue that. It won't work like that. Because in 2022, you might have taken a business decision to discontinue that product. But in future, you might have assigned a shelf life for a product that you have sent it for commercial distribution with 5 years expiry. That means your liability is that until the last product or last tablet is being used, expiry plus 1 year, you just need to comply with the data assurance principles to maintain the data in its intact condition for accessing by any regulator or any legal body to that effect. So these are the few things that you have to be mindful. And some people will say that ALCOVA and ALCOVA Plus, these are the abbreviations for the data assurance, interchangeably used to the core definition that I have mentioned, or the simplest definition that I have mentioned. So organizations have to be very mindful on what they do and what they have written down. The written down procedures have to be complied every time. If they are doing any departure from that, they just need to address it with a deviation, or they need to address it within this data assurance or ALCOVA Plus framework. Just for everybody's interest, ALCOVA is nothing but A for attributable, L for legible, C for contemporaneous, O for original, A for accurate. There are other alphabets as plus, E for endurance and consistent. So the data must always meet to all these basic criteria. Then only your regulator or anybody will accept to that. I hope I have answered your question.
Yeah, very well explained. Thank you, Lakshmanamurthy. I think, it was very well. In fact, with the limited time, I know you would, in fact, try to go on with those particular aspects. Now, I asked the similar question to Mr. Chandrasekhar. In fact, what could be the challenge, on these data integrity? Because, you from the quality assurance and quality control all your life, and then trying to do with regard to it. What could be the challenge you face across on these data integrity?
Over a period of time, probably from 2008 onwards, there is a lot of emphasis from regulators with regard to data integrity. Fortunately, we have a lot of literature is available now, as of now, so which we are using in our day-to-day activities. And we also, many of the companies are also started, and regulators are insisting for data integrity policy to be in place. And according to that policy, there is a different action items like intentional, unintentional, and training related issues. So there will be an investigation with support of HR and the proper integrity policies in place. So that created awareness across the industry. And fortunately, we have these electronic systems are also in place in many of the companies throughout India. And that is giving a lot of the easy of life for QA personnel. Because earlier, during 1995-96, we have to track all the action items of change control deviation manually. Now we are able to, we are getting triggers from the electronic systems. So that way our real focus, actually we are focusing more on the quality investigations rather than tracking systems manually. So that way it's really helping us, and it is making sure that when activity is completed, then only in the next step, the next person will go. So that is ensuring the 21 CFR Part 11 requirements also. So like that, we are handling both training as well as electronic systems wise.
Okay, that was a good way of actually trying to express and see to it that how we can take this forward. With the coming years, and then when these are very important to all of those particular things. Thank you very much, Chandrasekhar, for your explanation. As we move forward, in fact, we always try to look at, this is also a very, I don't know how to put it across, but definitely, in industries, many a times we always try to see that, when they do the sampling. And when they do these particular sampling, they always try to see that, should I, in fact, try to take these numbers of samples, even though you have some specific methodology or procedures that needs to be followed as such. But in the industry, we always try to find out these aspects, which is reduce sampling, and then how you in fact try to do these particular testings based on that. So how would you in fact try to address this with these challenges that comes into place? Chandrasekhar, can you?
Yes, please. With regard to sampling, there are several criteria. For example, in case of raw materials, we use root n+1 calculations. For example, there is 100 containers. Root 100 is 10 plus 1, 11 containers. We collect the samples and we test it. But that was the earlier things. But nowadays, every container should have an identity test. So that is a requirement. So industries are using NIR technique for the identification. And at least all the 100 containers will be tested for NIR. And 11 containers, the representative sample from 11 containers will be testing for the entire testing, complete testing, before releasing for the next stage. In case of finished product, for example, any OSD or tablets or injectable, every sample we have to collect entire starting, middle, and onwards, and it's a completely representative of the entire sampling. So like that, based on the risk of in the process, the sampling to be defined. At the time of introduction of the product itself, we need to identify the sampling plan, how we are going to address this plan. So there is a process variability also plays a major role here. If the process is consistent, then based on that, we can also adopt a skip testing as one of the process. For all the established process, we can use the skip testing phenomena. Otherwise, we have to go with 100% sampling.
I think that was an in-depth information for people that how they would in fact try to. What is your opinion, Mr. Dr. Rao? Dr. Ram?
Yeah. So thank you, Mr. Yeah. Are you able to hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So actually, Chandrasekhar has already covered. So I think what the important is for the sampling, the company should have a robust SOP for sampling, which describes various phases of sampling. Like as Chandra mentioned rightly, like for example, earlier square root of n+1. Today, for example, when we get an API from other company as a drug product manufacturer, I take 100% of the sampling. All containers I will sample, and I do the identification test, and I do the component sample, all the analysis. And even if I am opting for any skip testing, I think it should be scientifically justified. That is the expectation from the regulators. I cannot just simply do the any skip testing. I have to really justify based on my historical data, right? And vendor qualification, all those criteria will be built in, to gain the confidence. So it is not as simple as that just I'll go with the skip testing, but there should be a sound scientific rationale and justification. So one important thing is like we have a lot of samples, like finished product sampling, blend samples, the uniformity of the blend samples, uniformity of the dosage forms, several tests we do. So the sampling depending on the type of the test what we do, and also the it should depend on the whole sampling when we get the result, because we are making a decision based on the results what we generate on the sample. So it should be representative, homogeneous, and it should be done very, very effectively and efficiently based on the sound SOP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I mean, in fact, it was really a good way of actually just trying to put forth, how these GMP practices that can take industry into the next level. To summarize, in fact, on the three ways that what we were looking upon, the culture, the way that how the smart way to work with regard to it, and also that how we in fact try to understand the sampling, which talks about all of these aspects, to put a good manufacturing practice that is based on the ICH guidelines or based on various other quality management systems as such. I think these were very good, in fact, and then could help the industry into the next level as such. So thank you very much.
And Mr. Vasudev, just one point to add, if you permit me. Regarding the data integrity, colleagues have talked a lot about it, but many companies, today they have put a DI policy in the company, data integrity policy. It is very, very mandatory requirement from the regulators. What is the policy of data integrity policy? What actions will take? If anybody is, doing any issues with respect to data integrity, what actions company is going to take? Those things also very, very critical. Just I want to put that aside. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that. So let me hand over now to Angus to take the remaining two questions before we try to think about it. Yeah, over to you, Angus. Thank you.
Thank you, Vasu. So yes, changing tack slightly here onto more good distribution practice topics. And in fact, Dr. Rao, I'm going to come to you first with this question. And it's around a sort of technical aspect of good distribution practice in monitoring or having oversight of the root risk assessments and processes for logistics companies. I wonder how Dr. Reddy approaches those challenges. Perhaps you could share your insights.
Yeah, Angus, actually, I am not the expert in this, but I'll try to answer based on my experience at Dr. Reddy's, right? So we have a lot of network, like when we ship the products to international destinations like Europe, US, and all. We actually what Dr. Reddy's do is they validate the vendors, qualify the vendors, And also one of the practical challenge what before do that also, when we, especially when we dispatch the sensitive products, drug products, we'll do a lot of transport simulation studies. Okay. And one of the challenge what I could see is the excursions, when we ship the products to international destinations, sometimes especially the sea shipments will take a lot of time, and it will go through different temperature zones. And we used to get a lot of reports on the we put the temp tails, temperature loggers and all within the shipments. We get a lot of when the customer receives the shipment, he will give the data. Now this shipment has been undergone, excursion, higher temperature exposure and all, which we need to justify. So I think these are some of the practical challenges, but this being a mature company, I think there are good systems in place and for the good distribution and good shipping practices.
Thank you, Dr. Rao. And to you, Mr. Agrawal, your perspectives on those same challenges?
Yes, prima facie, the GDP looks very smaller as compared to GMP, but I think it's not the case. It's a misnomer. The GDP guidelines are very, very elaborate, and last guidelines were updated by EU in 2013, and there are specific guidelines with reference to storage, temperature, thermal mapping, and the transport conditions, because each of the pharmaceutical product, whether it is tablet or syrup or API or vaccines, I think they require the environmental conditions differ very widely. So the conditions under which they can be stored and they can be transported vary from product to product, and therefore product-specific guidelines and product-specific contractual arrangement with the logistic companies needs to be made. One of the main difference in the specific requirement is the thermal map. Although we do it as part of the GMP in our storage warehouse, but actually the requirement belongs to GDP and not GMP. So I think a risk-based approach and a suitable approach for the product that we are transporting or that is subject to logistics needs to be looked at, and every company has to get into assessment process and deal with the logistic company accordingly. Transitional requirements. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you. That's very insightful. And just our final topic from our prescribed list here of areas to look at before we open this up to our audience to ask any questions of our distinguished panel. We should have a few minutes at the end of this, Vasu, to take any questions. I'd encourage anyone to type their questions into the chat capability of this, and we'll come to that shortly. But I guess I just wanted to round out this talking about the setup of contracts with this company. How should what innovation, what smart ways do we have of setting up contractual requirements with those logistics companies to maintain quality in the distribution of medicines? And perhaps I can come to Mr. Sakar to answer that question first. Mr. Sakar. Chandra.
Yes, please. Yeah. Thank you, Angus. Sorry, I think I missed the question. Can you just brief that?
I absolutely can. So I'm interested in your perspectives on how to best set up the contractual requirements with logistics companies to maintain that quality in the distribution of medicines.
Definitely. Actually, this is the right question, because many of the suppliers, for example, if I had to ship a particular standard from particular material from 2 to 8 degrees centigrade, throughout the journey they need to maintain 2 to 8. So we are placing data loggers, and these kind of requirements, what we need to do as our agreement should specify the roles or responsibilities of the supplier as well as the manufacturer, and we make sure that our agreements are in place, and there is a table within the agreement. The responsibility section will clearly define what is the scope of each of us. We have seen in my previous organization also, we have seen some cases there are some excursions when they are changing the shipment from one vehicle to other vehicle, and there is a seasonal variation is also there. So that has been incorporated in our simulation studies of transport and shipping validation, including the route validation is also mandatory, and seasonal variations also need to be monitored. So these kind of whatever established route variations should be met by the supplier. So our agreement should be so strong that in case of any liability, that will be borne by the suppliers in the case. And we have to make sure that whatever we are sending through shipment, that has to meet the till it reaches to the end consumer. That way, our agreement should be in place appropriately.
Very good, thank you. And finally, from me, Mr. Agrawal, would you mind just giving your thoughts on that same topic of contractual relations with the logistics companies?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that the key requirements and distribution of medicines are temperature during the transit, the material handling system, how to handle the materials, and the route selection based on the transit temperatures and transit risk based on transit risk, and the cargo safety. These are the normally four concerns you must work while making a contract with the logistic companies. But logistic companies being what they are, I think smaller companies, mid-tech companies will find it very difficult to make a contract with them because your cargo is not interesting for them. It's just a small cargo. Unless you have a big cargo and you are in a position to negotiate with them and discuss with them, I think they find it very difficult to negotiate with them. And there is not one agency which is handling the logistics. You handle, initially you handle with the shipper, then you handle with the airline cargo, then you handle with the airport cargo. There are many people involved. So there is no one single agency with whom you can make a contractual arrangement. I think unless the material leaves your port, you have to take care at each and every stage. The company concerned has to take care at each and every stage. After the material is left, then you can take a contractual arrangement with the logistic company who is flying your cargo to the other destination. So these are my thoughts on this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Angus, I would like to add two things here. In addition to whatever Mr. Agarwal and Dr. BM has mentioned, our risk assessment should be focused more towards chances of cross-contamination, chances of mix-ups, and chances of environmental excursions, and trace and track kind of mechanism that existed with some of the companies, wherein they just track the product from factory to the end user. So when these kind of things are there, there would not be any chances of illicit drugs getting into the supply chain, which is very important, or fake drugs or spurious drugs getting into the things. That is where, as a manufacturer, to protect your brand reputation as well to the patient's health, one has to pay very good attention with respect to the GDP practices. As rightly pointed by Mr. Agarwal, GDP also, it looks small, it is bigger element than GMP. You may be making a very good product, genuine product. If it changes hands and it becomes a illicit drug, or it is taken by illicit traders, repackagers, relabelers, it takes out your brand reputation also. That's why many companies are coming up with innovative, smarter technologies. And of course, Dr. Reddy's, my previous company, was also one among such company, has identified some QR code wherein you scan the product and you would identify, or it comes with a separate packaging configuration wherein you could easily figure out whether it is a genuine drug or legitimate drug, or it is an illicit drug. So a lot of innovation is happening with respect to the packaging, so that there won't be any kind of issues with respect to the distribution of safe and genuine products. That's what I would like to add.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. I very much appreciate that. I'm conscious that we're running out of time, and particularly Dr. Rao is running out of time. He needs to be out of here pretty imminently. So on behalf of all of us, Dr. Rao, thank you very much for being part of this. If you do need to slip away, by all means do. But we really appreciate your contributions to the conversation this morning. Vasu, can I hand it back to you to see us out for the rest of the allotted time that we've got. I appreciate it's only a few minutes, but I'll hand it back to you.
Yeah, go ahead, Aparajita. I think it was wonderful. In fact, each of you people, in fact, have actually expressed, with the practical knowledge, and actually seen that, how things have been developed, right from the day one that, where you have actually gone in. In fact, thank you for all the panelists who have actually joined and then give your opinions, where we have taken a lot of information, and I think, the audience would also be appreciated with these particular information too. So I go back to Aparajita. I think, if you have any questions, anything that, where people have asked, you could, in fact, try to, I think, just about a couple of minutes, but nevertheless, in fact, in case if we will always try to answer to them and then give them the feedback. So over to you, Aparajita.
Thank you, Vasudev. I have few questions with me from the audience. Thank you very much for sending us your questions. And maybe Vasudev and Angus, you can help me to address it to our guest speakers. So I'll read the questions. The first one is, what determines the priorities elements in the registered and critical starting material?
I think this Chandrasekhar could try to answer this. I think, it's something more on. Yeah.
Yes, please. Aparajita, can you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What determines the priorities elements in a registered critical starting material?
Critical starting material. No, I'm not getting the complete question, please. There is some. What in a critical starting material? What is the question?
Yeah, what determines the priorities? Basically, the elements which are in a registered and a critical starting material.
Yes, critical starting material. For example, there are a couple. It's not clear. Question is not clear. For any critical starting material, we need to determine based on the critical quality attributes. For any which impacts the critical quality attribute, and it is a part of a structure, the final molecule, that could be called as a critical starting material. And the question with regard, I'm not really sure what is the question about. But if it is regard to, yeah, I think Lakshman, can you?
Yeah. So what determines the selection of a critical starting material, as I have rightly mentioned by Chandra, whenever any material that goes and sits as an important structural fragment into the molecule, that is going to be considered as a starting material. With regard to the selection of starting material, it must be an article of commerce, it must meet to the critical material attributes, and at the same time it must represent or goes into the structure. And it must have physicochemical properties. That means when you want to purchase this material, when you want to have this material as an incoming material for your drug substance or a drug product manufacture, you have to consider all these three aspects. It must be an article of commerce, it must have defined physicochemical properties, it must go and sit as an important structural fragment. This is what the selection criteria. And many people, they indigenously develop these key starting material related process also, which they call it as a CMC section initially. But as the plants goes on for a scale up, they just don't want to burden their resources. So they want to look for an outsource manufacturer so that they can use those resources for other product manufacture. Rather spending their time on developing these key starting materials or manufacturing these key starting materials, they go and outsource this. This is how they debottleneck their resources and get these materials. And you know that people in India get these materials for a cheaper cost from China and other countries. So those starting materials, when they come from cheaper cost from different people, you can certainly deburden your resources and use that resources optimally for some other product. That's what the criteria you need to follow. I hope this clarifies the question.
Absolutely. I think you touched upon the point. Yeah.
Yes. And to add to Lakshmana's point, Aparajita, there are some materials also comes for example, critical process consumables, for example, filters, which has a direct contact with the product. That's a part of a critical process consumable, and which is a direct part of maybe a transfer line. The filling transfer line is also a CPC. So based on the risk and the category of the process, we need to identify and categorize as a, for all CPC materials, we need to have a complete testing. We should not accept the material based on the vendor COA. So that kind of assessment we have to make at the initially introduction of the products itself.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shekhar and Mr. Murthy. The next question is, can you provide some guidance, objective criteria for performing visual inspection of equipment after the cleaning?
I think, I mean, it's open to, you know, because this is a very logical, in fact, you know, the question that has been asked, I think. Anyone can take up this? Yes, okay.
Yes. It is, in fact, visual inspection is a good old practice. And for any equipment that is cleaned and get ready for the next batch to be processed, there are 3 types of cleaning approaches: B2B, C2C, P2P. What is this? I will explain. B2B, batch to batch. C2C, campaign to campaign. P2P, product to product. So whenever you are, as I have mentioned it in the order, batch to batch cleaning, if you are in a dedicated setup, you are just cleaning that between the batches, you can still use that visual inspection as a tool, so that there is not much of a cleaning that is needed between the batches, and you are in a dedicated setup. There are less chances of a contamination or a cross contamination. Whereas for campaign to campaign, there will be gross accumulations around the critical parts of your equipment are hard to clean the equipment parts. That is where you just go for a rigorous this thing. Along with the visual inspection, you also establish a criteria of not more than 10 ppm or some kind of changeover cleaning limits before you are doing the line clearance for that equipment. P2P, if you are in a non-dedicated equipment facility, that is most complex thing. You just need to establish MACO kind of maximum allowable carryover change kind of cleaning limits before you do this kind of line clearance. So as I have mentioned, P2P, product to product changeover cleaning is very critical. One should pay attention, and you should never use the simple visual inspections. And at the same time, visual inspection is something may not create an objective evidence. The way somebody looks into a vessel or peep into a vessel may not provide that assurance when there is no checker. So it is not just the doer, it is also the checker or some kind of image or a photo that you need to take and keep as an objective evidence that by the time you are clearing this equipment for further use, you have ensured that cleaning is adequate and complete, and there are less chances of any contamination or cross contamination. So this is what I can add.
Thank you for that. Okay, Aparajita, any more questions?
Yes, a few more. Okay, so if a process step defined as non-critical by the manufacturer, does the process step should be validated? Angus, can you help with this question?
Yes, please. It has to be validated, because each and every step, either both critical and non-critical, it has to be validated. Then only we can claim it as a validated process.
Yeah, irrespective of critical, non-critical steps, you are here validating the process. But the special attention that you need to give for critical quality attributes are the critical process parameters, where those parameters, when they exceeded, may create an irreversible impact on the overall process or the product quality. So that's where you just need to give additional attention. It doesn't mean that you just ditch the non-critical parameters as part of validation. And it's a one-off event these days. You may be doing concurrent process validation, but when you take that magical number 3 batches to prove that consistency, that it meets to the criteria, you just need to have more data supporting your process validation, irrespective of critical, non-critical processes.
Thank you, Mr. Murthy. And the last question would be, for outsourcing of tests to approved test labs, is it a must for a test lab to have ISO 17225 certification? Is it necessary to ensure that they are validated the method and use qualified equipment? Angus, can you help me?
Yes,
Well,
yes, sir. Yes, sir, Pradeep.
There are better people to answer that question than me, if I'm honest. So I'll invite my colleagues here on the panel to contribute as they see fit.
I think Mr. Agarwal, I think he was in fact very keen to say answer to this, looking at it. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
No, I'm enjoying because all the other 3 panelists are quality experts. so I'm really enjoying the inputs from them. So I think nowadays FDA expects all the outsourcing labs to be also approved by FDA, and they must follow certain systems, certain traceability, and certain discipline in their reporting the results. So I think ISO is the minimum qualification that an outside test lab will require to qualify to outsource to meet the requirements. Thank you.
Yeah. GMPs are enforced by law and the ISO systems are voluntary. Making a choice to undergo some kind of 17025 kind of accreditation for a testing laboratory, it's a journey that they can begin with, and to have those basic QMS requirements adhered to with respect to a testing and calibration lab. Yeah, it's recommended. Of course, it is at the preference of how they select and choose that kind of certification. But many companies, they choose small and mid-sized companies when they aspire to go for US FDA certification. They use these ISO 9001 or 17025 certifications as the basic requirements to begin the journey, so that when they were done with the kind of gap assessment by these competent 9001 and 17025 assessor companies, they can give those insights to them, where do they stand before they aspire to go with the US FDA kind of GMP requirements. That way, the ISO certification helps them transform into the next level of meeting to the US FDA kind of requirements. That's what I would like to add.
Yes, and to add to Lakshman,
a competitive edge also. It provides a contract testing lab that is not ISO 17025 accredited versus a lab that is accredited. That provides a kind of assurance to the customer that this lab is accredited, maybe maintaining all the basic quality QMS requirements. And let me go and choose this, because I may have less issues, less compliance issues, less QMS issues when I were to award them a contract. So that kind of assurance and the competitive edge in getting the orders from more customers, ISO certifications definitely help. That's what I would like to add. Sorry, Chandra,
yes.
over to you.
Yeah, you are right, Lakshmana. To add, Aprajita, with regard to method validation, earlier for outsourced laboratories, we used to just share the methods, but now the expectation is it has to be validated by them, because unless until it's not validated, because there are multiple people involved in this testing of the laboratory, they need to have a validated method and it has to be developed before validation. it has to be developed by third party and it has to be validated by them. Once it is satisfactory, both from transferor to transferee, and we need to agree based on that, then we need to start sending samples to the laboratory. This is mandatory nowadays. Actually, inspectors are looking into this angle. Whether you are outsourcing tests means there is a lot of focus on these areas.
Okay. Thank you so much for the answer. And I'm conscious of time, so we'll be ending the Q&A round here. And thank you everyone for attending today's roundtable, and thank you to our guest speakers and our moderators.